Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is, and welcome to the City Council meeting of September 14th, 2020. I'm David Avila. I'm your mayor for this year, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. And we'll start off by asking Captain Williams to lead us in the pledge.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of the United States of America,
Republic,
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Captain. Mrs. Crawford, would you call roll call?
Councilmember Bogue?
Here.
Councilmember Duncan?
Here.
Councilmember Riddell?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Present.
Mayor Avila?
Here. Thank you. Mr. Casier, are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
No changes this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we're going to move on to public comment. I'd like to remind everybody that we have anyone can comment on any subject except for items on the agenda this evening. Is this public comment? Okay. I'd like to remind again also that you have a 3-minute limit. And we'll go ahead and start. Joe Sutt.
Good evening. My name is Joe Sutt. I live at 34111 Wildwood Canyon Road, space number 117 in Yucaipa. Hello to all the council members. I want to make a brief comment on 3 different subjects tonight, so I'm going to talk really fast because I know I have a 3-minute limit. Number 1, I support the Black Lives Matter movement. I do not support violence or destruction or defunding or disbanding of our local law enforcement. As a matter of fact, I strongly admire and support and rely on most of our law enforcement personnel. I do want to see increased education and training for dealing with the mentally ill or emotionally charged situations, etc. May we all stay safe. I also would like to see the City Council draft and publicize a proclamation regarding the City of Yucaipa's commitment to equal rights, equal protections, and equal treatment for all. Number 2. Sorry. Number 2. With regard to the Rent Control Commission, I wish to reiterate my original objection to Bill Meacham's appointment to the commission. This is not a matter of personal preference. Mr. Meacham is available, communicative, and affable. These are not the issues. He also has a great deal of knowledge and experience about the mobile home park industry. He has all of that knowledge and experience because of his long-standing involvement, both professional and personal, with that industry. I want to state again that I consider that to be a serious conflict of interest. Number 3, regarding COVID-19, I would like all of our representatives to be strongly urged to follow COVID-safe policies when attending public functions. I understand we may all have differences of opinion regarding these policies, and I would be happy to have a dialogue with anyone who disagrees with them, but they are now mandated, and I think it is only appropriate. Shoot, I lost a page. Hold on. That our city officials follow those rules when appearing in official capacity. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next, for public comment, I believe it's Bill McEwen. There he is. Hi, Bill.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Bill McEwen, 123614 Street. I'm here to tell a little story, and at the end, you'll realize what the story's about, okay? I have a nephew who's a California Highway Patrolman, and he lives up north. Probably about 10 years ago now, he was sitting there talking to the Caltrans road crews, and the Highway Patrolmen often work tandem. So he was sitting on the side of the road, it must have been a state highway, talking to a Caltrans guy. And all of a sudden, this guy, you know, they have speed limit signs, slow to 35 or whatnot. This guy goes racing through it. So my nephew jumps in his car and goes up and pulls the guy over. And the guy jumps out of his car, tackles my nephew, takes his gun, puts the gun on top of him, and he's going to shoot the guy, right? He's going to shoot my nephew. It happened like in a number of seconds. And I don't want to get in a lot of details, but my nephew ended up, his training kicked in, extensive training on what to do in situations like that. His training kicked in, and he took control of the situation. Unfortunately, he had to shoot the guy. And he was holding the guy like this, like off his, he was still on top of my nephew. So he's holding the guy like that, and boom, he had to shoot him. He lost the top digits of his trigger finger. Unfortunately, or fortunately rather, he's right-handed, so he still has his trigger finger. So these situations, these are split-second decisions these officers have to make. You know, they don't know exactly what's going to happen each time they approach a car, and that's what happened. He's now a sergeant. He got promoted, and he's working up north. But so I guess what I'm getting at is we have a professional police department. I'm very confident that all of our county sheriffs are highly trained professionals. And I happen to live in a high crime area. I have made a number of calls for service because of things I've seen that aren't good. I saw a man one time just run up to his kid on the sidewalk and just slug him, just floored him. Where he goes down and the cops come. I dialed 911 because I didn't know how far the guy was going to take it. They came out. They were there within 2 or 3 minutes, and they had the guy handcuffed within 5 minutes. So, I mean, it's situations like that their professional training kicks in. We have professionals here, and I hope we can maintain our city with the professionals that work for the police department. We don't need militias in Yucaipa. I think it'll make our city much less safe. We don't need sharpshooters on rooftops. We need to be able to call 911 when we need service and let the professionals handle these situations. So I'm glad my nephew's all right. I'm glad the police department's all right. I'm just very grateful for all the service they provided to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there's no other speakers. We'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Is there anything, anybody from on the dais would like to pull anything from the consent for discussion? Hearing nothing, is there a motion to accept?
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a first and a second to approve the consent agenda. If there's no further discussion, Jennifer, we take roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. All right, passes unanimously. Any mayor or council member business to report? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to staff presentations. Item number 5, League of California Cities 2020 Annual Conference Resolution Packet. And that'll be Mrs. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The League of California Cities Annual Business Meeting is scheduled for Friday, October 9th, 2020 at 11 a.m. Due to COVID, the conference is virtual this year. Councilmember Duncan will be the city's voting delegate, and only one resolution is being considered and is included in your packet on page 32 and 33. The intent of the resolution is to address the use of social media platforms for posting information that leads followers to meet and commit crimes, and to also hold these platforms and the persons who post that information civilly and criminally accountable for all costs incurred by the local jurisdictions where the crimes occurred. You have information in the packet that came with it, with the analyst, with the League of California Cities. You also have example and support letters from the cities that have submitted them that are included as part of your packet. The recommendation before you is that you consider Resolution Number 1, an amendment to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996 to require social media companies to remove materials which promote criminal activities, and determine that the city's position that the voting delegate can represent at the annual business meeting. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Very well, thank you very much, Mrs. Crawford. Mr. Riddell, do you have any questions or comments?
No, but I'd like to move the item.
Okay, we have a motion to move the item. Councilmember Allen, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I have read the resolution, and in my opinion, the recommended amendments or changes as shown or stated on page number, it would be 33, in my opinion, are too vague. I certainly appreciate and understand the intent of this, but the term criminal activity is not defined anywhere here, and I believe that that is a big problem. Plus, I do not believe that the social media companies should act as law enforcement agencies, and the change or the recommendation as stated in item number 2 does ask them to serve in that capacity. So because of those two issues, I cannot support this.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Duncan, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not.
Councilmember Bogue.
I had a lot of the same concerns that Mayor Pro Tem Allen had. But one that really grabbed my attention was who becomes the arbiter of what is criminal activity? Is it the social media employee in a cubicle somewhere, or is it a judge? Is it a police officer? What is the definition, and who is the arbiter of this? I don't suspect that you would know exactly where it goes. So.
There was
I
nothing in
guess
the
it's a
documents that
rhetorical
I read
question.
that call that out. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I think your point is well taken. It starts with someone in a cubicle that works for a social media company. So that is a real concern, I think.
right, and we're talking about a First Amendment right. And don't get me wrong, I think social media is a lot of good, but there's also some terrible people and terrible statements put on social media. But I have to err on the side of the First Amendment, I guess, more than I would of voting to suppress that, I guess. I wish people would use it more responsibly. And yeah, like the definition of what criminal activity is so vague that it could apply. Well, I don't want to get in any further, but I'll leave it at that.
I think that the Communications Decency Act of 1996 kind of outlines that, but because it's not written in this presentation, we don't have the benefit of understanding what that act entails. The other side is if we don't do anything, then we still have the Decency Act of 1996 to fall back on. But I think the intent of this is to give that Decency Act a little more teeth. But again, it's not clearly defined, and so it's really, in my opinion, knowing the League of Cities, is that they're probably going to approve it. So we can go to our hearts, if we feel like it's not going to be, if we don't want to support it, I think in the long run it's going to pass anyways. But so let your conscience be your guide. We do have a motion to approve this, move this forward. I did not hear a second. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second to move this forward and to approve. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Hearing none. Jennifer, will you call roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bogue,
No.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
No.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Okay, it doesn't pass unanimously. It does go 3-2, but it does move forward.
I think this is one that we really should keep our eye on, though, because it really will have an impact on law enforcement. I do think there is an issue for sure, but I think this really will have a serious impact on cities.
We can report back at the end of the process if you like. I'm guessing there may be, at times, the other entities will introduce suggested language or amendments that are heard on the floor. So if that happens, I'll report back.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to item number 6, written public comment distribution policy. Again, that'll be Mrs. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The attached written public comment distribution policy, which is before you this evening, is based on the council direction received at the August 10th, 2020 meeting. The policy has been drafted to establish a protocol and strike a balance between the public's interest in access to the comments, the interest in avoiding publication of comments improperly attributed to another person, and privacy interests of individual commenters. However, some modifications have been made to the policy as it pertains to posting the public comments on the website. Since public comments received after the deadline are made available in the council chambers in the back of the room in redacted form pursuant to the Brown Act, staff is now recommending via the policy that public comments also be posted online following the meeting. This is currently not our practice, and it is one that we are recommending within the policy. The second item is to minimize subjectivity. The policy does not include a provision that provides on a case-by-case basis staff's discretion to be more protective of commenters' privacy, since everything but the individual's names are redacted. And then the third is extending this policy to commissions, which would be the Planning Commission and Mobile Home Rent Review Commission, to ensure consistency across the board. The recommendation is that you review and adopt the public comment distribution policy. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Riddell, do you have any questions or comments?
No comment.
Councilmember Allen, do you have any questions or comments?
No comment.
Nope.
Mr. Duncan, do you have any questions or
comment.
comments?
Since this COVID pandemic has started, is that what has prompted this? Because I don't recall, yes, completely, right? I mean, normally we meet and they come here and they tell us what's on their mind, and they always introduce themselves and their address, or that's optional. But we're having to change this permanently because of this? Are we going to go back to the norm? Are we going to continue to accept written public comment and then just read it on the dais individually? Or what is our game plan here?
Sorry, I think this is kind of our current, this will be how we move forward. If there's issues down the line that you have a concern with the policy, but I think more and more people kind of prefer to send in written public comment versus coming into the meeting. When the COVID pandemic is over, more people may choose to come back into council chambers and speak before you at the microphone, but some may continue to send public comment via email. I'd also like to note, because I missed it, we have changed, instead of the public comment having to be received by 3 o'clock, it's going to be 3 hours, 3 business hours prior to the meeting. And that helps address some of the commission meetings that we have. Sometimes they take place in the morning, so we kept some consistency there. But I think this is a policy to help us move forward when they're received.
Is this something that is mandated by the state or the county, or is this something that we're just doing because we want to accommodate the public?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, it's a complicated question here. There's a lot of overlapping layers. So I think from just a practical perspective, folks have always had the opportunity to submit written comments, and those would be forwarded on to the city council. With the COVID situation, that became more important, and rules were modified and tailored to that situation. I think as Ms. Crawford referenced, some folks have become accustomed to that, and thus perhaps the more formality of having a policy how to deal with that. But folks are allowed to submit public comments, written public comments, just like they can come to the speaker's microphone under normal circumstances to provide input to the city council. And the policy here is intended to kind of memorialize the individual's rights to do that, timelines from an administrative perspective, so staff can process those, get those to the city council, and then of course, finally, the privacy issues that were the source of conversation at prior meetings.
So are we going to decide, vote yea or nay on this, and then for the time being, and then with the stipulation that we're going to go back to the norm at some point? Because the way it is now, you know, somebody from Hawaii can crap all over you in written form, and they're not even in the city. And that doesn't seem right to me at all. It seems like if you're going to crap on somebody, you should have the courage to stand up and look them in the eye. So are we going to approve this based on the fact that for the time being, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're going to go ahead and allow this? Or are we going to vote to do this indefinitely?
I think it's a policy.
Just Jennifer, just to be clear, people can submit and have always been able to submit public comments electronically. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so this is just clarifying how we're going to deal with those submissions and the source of those submissions.
Correct.
Okay, just to clarify that this is no change in what historically people have been able to do. It's just that we have had a lot more of them now because of COVID.
Are you done? Councilmember Bogue, do you have any questions, comments?
No. We can redact this. We can change the policy at any time, so.
Absolutely.
And we really aren't changing anything at this point.
No, and it helps give staff clear direction.
Yeah.
We've had several meetings where we've had the two spectrums. We had one resident being threatened because their address, but we had another resident whose name was used and kind of false presented who that individual was. So a lot of cities are going through this right now, determining, okay, do you want us to read it into record? Do you want it posted to the website? Do you want the names redacted, addresses redacted? So based on a few meetings that we've had and the direction you provided, we decided it would be best to come up with a policy so that all the various departments working with the council and or commissions were consistent. And we as staff have a straight direction on what we're supposed to redact and what we're not. It's not up for interpretation.
Right.
So it assists staff too to make sure we're following your direction consistently.
And I would just add that it also helps the public because we have a policy that if someone wants to know how we handle public comment, written public comment, there's a policy they can look at and understand what the rules are, what the submission deadlines are, how they'll be processed.
Well, we had one.
And I like I go ahead. I'm going to just make a comment. I do like the fact that we have, as a council, decided not to read letters that are submitted electronically to publicly, which I think is a good policy given that one situation that occurred. And I strongly support that we keep that position.
Absolutely agree. And I was going to cite the one example where Glory Selda, someone wrote a letter to the council. It was read publicly, and it was complete fraud. And in this day of electronic age, you never know what you're getting, if it's truthful or it's real or whatever. And I just don't want to see us adapt to this permanently. People need to have the courage to come here and tell us face to face what's on their mind, in my opinion.
They've always had the option of writing in, and we've received handwritten comments in the past, and I think that's appropriate. And now, as a result, as Mrs. Crawford indicated, that there's been some circumstances which fraudulent, there's been letters written with a fraudulent name attached to it, and there's been some, what perceived at least, some threats to an individual because that person's address was publicly displayed, and we want to protect them. I think, I agree with you. I believe that, you should stand by your word, but we're having some issues right now with authenticity, and people are afraid for their safety. So we can enact this policy, and then down the road, it's just a policy. We can always change it if we think there's a need for it. But nothing really changes except for the way that we handle it, right? So,
This is Dick Riddell. I'd like to make one comment. I would at least like to know whether they're a resident of Yucaipa or not.
I don't think that's legally required.
It might not be legally required, but it sure be good information. I don't want a bunch of comments from outsiders. I would put less credence on those than if they were local.
Mr. Snow?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. Again, I think it's fine to ask for that information. We can certainly ask that when folks come to the dais here to speak when that option is available. You can certainly ask that. It's a little more difficult when you just receive these pieces of correspondence without the ability to kind of necessarily inform folks of what the council would be looking for in advance of that. So it's a little challenging in the written context to kind of require that, if you will. I don't think you could require it of a speaker at the dais either. And certainly, I don't think we would have the ability to refuse to accept or distribute those comments.
Well, maybe we can't make it mandatory, but from my standpoint, I would, if they're willing to put that they're a resident of Yucaipa, I would certainly put a little more credence on it than if they were some outsider.
Absolutely. Okay.
Can I move the item? Is there
ahead.
already a motion?
Yes, sir.
There's already a motion?
No, there's not a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a first.
Second.
We have a first and a second. If there's no further discussion, Jennifer, you take roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
No?
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes, it moves forward. Subject to item number 7, biennial review of the city's conflict of interest code. One more time, Mrs. Crawford.
Thank you, Council. This, obviously, as you just stated, is a biennial review of our conflict of interest code. The codes were last amended on August 2018. Staff has reviewed the codes for city and successor agency to the Yucaipa Redevelopment Agency. And the code for the successor agency requires no amendments at this time. However, staff is proposing changes that are listed on page 51 and 52 of your packet that highlight the new positions and their disclosure category. After this review, the recommendation is that the City Council receive and file the 2020 local annual biennial notice for the City of Yucaipa and the successor agency to the redevelopment agency, review the proposed amendments to the Conflict of Interest Code, and adopt resolution number 2020-57, amending the city's Conflict of Interest Code and rescinding resolution number 2018-14. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Mr. Riddell,
No questions.
Ms. Allen,
No.
Mr. Duncan,
No?
Mr. Bogue.
No.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
It's a receive and file, isn't it?
Is it really? I'm sorry, it's a receive and file. We don't need to.
There's 3 recommendations there, so I do need a motion and a second.
Okay, we have receive and file for the first one, and we need a first and a second for item number 2 and 3 on the recommendation. Do I hear a second on that?
I second
I'll
that.
second.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. If no further discussion, may I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. All right, now moving on. Are there any council members who has any business to report? Hearing none, we go to department reports. First one on item number 8, the 2021 Mobile Home Park Annual Registration Fee. Jennifer Crawford, star of the
I
day.
know, I loaded up on this one, didn't I? Okay, this one before you is a 2021 Mobile Home Park Annual Registration Fee. The intent of this fee is to cover the cost of administering the Mobile Home Park Rent Stabilization Program. To ensure that the program remains financially self-sufficient, for the past 14 years, Council has approved an overall funding model that is detailed on pages 59 and 60 of the staff report. The formula depicted in Exhibit A is based on the 3-year rolling average, which offsets unforeseen expenses, revenues, and/or revenues that may result from issues raised for the commission and/or council consideration, or changes made by the state, or some administrative applications that come before the rent administrator. Based on the model, the 2021 annual registration will increase from $5.90 per rent-controlled space per month to $8.50, each party paying $4.25. This is a large increase and is attributed to the change in the estimated to actual as it relates to increased expenses based on the 3-year rolling average, and staff salaries and benefits, overhead, and professional services relating to the program. Just based on the past 2 years, the activity in the rent control program has included the biennial review, educational conferences, the Executive Mobile Estates capital improvement application that came before the rent administrator and was approved and didn't get appealed, Valley View meet and confer process and revote of the Valley View meet and confer, and now the Valley View application that is before the Mobile Home Rent Review Commission and has been going on since this past October. Staff realizes that the impact to this increase will what it will have on the residents living in the parks. However, as stated above, the formula is based on that 3-year rolling average, and the applications for special rent adjustment and/or capital improvements are not stopping. Upon council adoption of resolution number 2020-56, city staff will send rate adjustment letters to both park owners and residents. The fee increase will take place in January of 2021 and will be reflected in the 2021 mobile home park registrations, which are required to be completed by the park owners and filed with the city by January 31st, 2021. The recommendation is that you adopt resolution number 2020-56, rescinding resolution number 2019-34, and amending resolutions number 2011-52, section 2.0007 B, C, and D, establishing the 2021 annual registration fee for the enforcement of mobile home rent stabilization ordinance. That's all I have, and myself and Ryan Blackerby are here to address any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Councilmember Riddell.
No questions. This is a long-standing formula that we've used, and it's spread over 3 years to kind of balance it out. It's some years it's practically nothing, and this year it happens to be a little bit higher, but that's the way the formula works, and it's been very effective. And I don't know what we would do if we didn't have this, so I think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Councilmember Riddell, or excuse me, Councilmember Allen.
No, I agree with everything Councilman Riddell just said.
Councilmember Duncan. Any questions or comments?
No, I don't have any questions.
Councilmember Bogue.
No.
All right. I have no extra comments. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
We have a first and a second. If no further discussion, Jennifer, take roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. And it passes. Moving on to item number 9, special event permit application, Live Oak Pumpkin Patch. Megan Wolf.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. On August 20th, City staff received a special event permit application from the Live Oak Pumpkin Patch. We received an application from the Pumpkin Factory to operate the Live Oak Pumpkin Patch and Christmas Tree Farm from September 24th to December 24th. After staff's review of the special event permit application, some requirements needed to be made prior to the approval of the permit. In development services, engineering is working with the applicant for a final temporary traffic control plan. You will see submitted this evening on page 69 of the application that there is a special event permit plan that has been submitted thus far, and on that plan is the city engineer's comments of additional changes that need to be made. Building and Safety has completed their site inspection, and the applicant is working with the inspectors to finalize any last-minute details. In Community Services, staff is working with the applicant to help get a special temporary food facility permit from the County of San Bernardino. The applicant has submitted all their COVID-19 compliance paperwork that they will be utilizing during the duration of the event. And the Yucaipa Police Department has signed off on the permit, just noting that in past years there has been quite a bit of traffic. However, they do follow the city engineer's traffic control plan. But if traffic does become a problem, we readdress the issue. Yucaipa Fire and also in the application, saw the map where the applicant is providing an emergency access road. Staff recommends that the special event permit be approved by City Council this evening, contingent on the applicant working with city staff to complete all details previously stated in the report. And tonight, city staff is asking City Council to approve the special event permit to hold the Live Oak Pumpkin Patch and Christmas Tree Farm located at 32335 Live Oak Canyon Road. And the applicant is here this evening should City Council have any questions. That concludes my report, and I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments of staff? Mr. Riddell.
No comment.
Ms. Allen.
I have two questions, Jennifer or Megan. On page number 70, it says that Outer Highway is going to remain a parking area, but I know we had issues with that last year. Has that been struck? And also, in the same page, it says they're going to use barbecue wood. Given what has been occurring with all of these fires, is that been addressed as a secure, use of cooking?
So to answer your question about page 70, the applicant was requesting that on their application. However, on page 83, in red, it's really hard to read the scanned portion of the document, but the city engineer's notes state that Live Oak Canyon Road cannot be used as parking, and so that is noted on the traffic control plan, and Fermin can jump in to clarify.
Yes, as Megan mentioned, the applicant is requesting to allow parking on Outer Highway 10 South. One of the comments to the proposed traffic control plan is that parking be restricted on Outer Highway 10 South. due to several reasons and consistent with the requirement from last year. So if approved tonight, staff will continue to work with the applicant to address some of the questions and comments that staff had on the traffic control plan, and we'll request that some of the measures that we have learned from previous years be implemented to reduce the impacts to the circulation near the site, and also the impacts to the public roadway adjacent to the site.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because it could be a big turnout this year, just because there's not a lot of choices for people right now to get out and do stuff. So, you know, it might be as big, if maybe bigger. So we want to make sure we have that traffic issue under control for sure.
The
And then
applicant,
in
the applicant
regards-
at this
oh,
point
sorry.
has already made some quite extensive improvements, hasn't he, on his own property?
Yes, one of the conditions of approval that would be applied to the conditional use permit would be to widen Live Oak Canyon Road, and the applicant has moved ahead and done that. They're in the process of doing that work right now. And as you can see on the proposed traffic control plan, they do show the widened segment of Live Oak Canyon Road, and they're proposing to use that as a additional turn lane into the site. So they have done some of the improvements already.
And then last year, I think it was an exceptional, a different circumstance, because didn't we have Yucaipa Boulevard blocked? And I believe the freeway was under construction at the time. So there were a lot of other different circumstances that were going on. It wasn't just the pumpkin patch that created all this traffic.
That's correct. We had Yucaipa Boulevard was down to one lane as part of our widening project. Caltrans did have some pavement maintenance work going on, and I believe the 60 freeway was also reduced to a few lanes, which added traffic to the I-10 freeway.
So I'd like to reevaluate it this year, because this year seems to be everything seems to be open, and maybe those problems will have solved themselves with the opening of all the other streets and roadways. Will we take that into consideration?
Yes, we're
Okay.
taking that into consideration as we review the traffic control plan that's being proposed.
Okay.
And then just to address Mayor Pro Tem Allen's second question about the barbecue wood chips, staff, I don't have an answer for that at this time, but staff will work with the applicant and the San Bernardino County Health Department to confirm that that is a safe item to use at this time.
Did I see the applicant raise his hand? Would he like to come up and say something? Thank you. If you state your name, please, for the record. Oh, you need to turn the speaker on.
Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. My name's Chris Ramison. I own the Live Oak Canyon Farm. And just to address Alan's question about the open wood, the only open wood that we use at the farm is for the smoker, and it's in a sealed container in the barbecue. We don't even have a food permit at this point, so it's a non-issue right now. Thank you.
Chris, did you also have to get an inspection by the fire department too?
Yeah, he's come out. He gave us a preliminary walkthrough and stuff. I've dealt with him for many years, and it's very accommodating. I know what he requires, and I don't have any problem doing what he asks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Well,
Mr.
I agree with Greg that this year should serve as a benchmark to analyze if there is a problem or not. Last year, there was a lot of problems, a lot of things going on that caused that. And at first glance, it looked like they had a problem, but in reality, we all had a problem. And that's kind of what I saw after I looked into it. So Outer Highway 10, Are we talking about that, there was parking allowed there, but now there's not? Is that what they're saying?
Last year, there was, parking was not allowed on Outer Highway 10 South, and that's one of the comments on the traffic control plan is that we continue that again this year, to not allow parking.
Okay.
And just to add, based on the review of the site plan that they provided, they have, I believe, over 900 parking spaces on site, and an additional 300 spaces on the, further down the street on Live Oak Canyon on the same side of the street. So there's almost 1,300 spaces on site.
Yeah, I know Chris, and based on the situation last year, I know he's going to be a lot more diligent this year to make sure we don't have a problem, and I'd like to move approval of the item.
We have a motion to approve the item. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I'll second
I'll
it.
second it.
We have 3 seconds, and Greg Bogue wins that one. Very good. I think we're all enthusiastic about this, Chris, so let's make this happen. Jennifer, will you do a roll call vote, assuming there's no further discussion?
Councilmember Bogue?
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan?
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Aye.
Mayor Avila?
Yes. Thank you. Good luck, Chris. Let's make this thing work real good. Real well. All right, moving on to item number 10, acceptance of grant award and adoption of resolution number 2020-59, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Casey, I believe you're running this one.
I will take this one. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you mentioned, this is an item that has several parts. One is accepting a grant award that staff applied for last year and found out earlier this year that we were successful in getting a grant to do the local hazard mitigation plan. And that covers about 75% of the cost. Also part of the staff report is a request to reallocate funding for our local match, which is basically staff time. So our local match for the grant is staff time only. We are obligated to update this every several years, 5 years, I think it is. So it's time to do that. Our current plan expires actually September 19th, 2021. And this is an act that was established in actually 2000, October 10th, 2000. The amount of the local match is the remainder from the $64,000, $782 grant. So that staff is requesting that the City Council accept the grant from FEMA through the pass-through entity of California Office of Emergency Services in the amount of $64,782, adopt the resolution authorizing the designation of applicant's agent for the pre-disaster mitigation competitive program, amend the fiscal year budget to allocate the $16,196 from the general fund salary budget for the local match. And again, that's just staff time, and find that the public interest will not be served by a formal proposal process, waive that formal solicitation of proposal qualifications and services for the hazard mitigation plan update based on the single proposal submitted by Andrew Patrol, Patrol Consulting, and approve and authorize the mayor to execute that professional services agreement with Patrol Consulting. This gentleman helped us the last time around, so he's very familiar with our plan, and updating the plan should be fairly straightforward for him. And finally, authorize the city manager or his designee to administer the terms of the agreement. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Mr. Riddell?
No questions, but I'll move the item.
We have motion to approve. Councilmember Allen?
No questions, but I'll second the item.
First and a second. Any other questions from the rest of the dais? No questions, no further discussion. Jennifer, take roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue?
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan?
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Aye.
Mayor Avila?
Yes. All right, it passes. Moving on, item number 11, special events update, Community Services Department, and that'll be Mrs. Wolf once more.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the current state and county regulations, special events will not look the same for the remainder of this year. Staff is proposing a drive-through Autumn Fest event and a haunted house event, both of which will follow state and county orders. On Tuesday, August 18th, staff from the Community Services Department attended the association meeting, the Uptown Association meeting, to inform the association members of the proposed 2020 Autumn Fest event. After hearing the ideas, the association did not vote in favor of the event and asked staff to come back with more ideas and speak with business owners in the Uptown. The following day, staff went and spoke with 2 business owners whose businesses would be open during the Autumn Fest event, which is the owner of Yucaipa and the owner of Uptown Wine Merchant. Both owners gave staff positive feedback about hosting the 2020 event and said some traffic is better than no traffic. Staff later returned to the Uptown Association on August 26th to provide an update. However, the meeting was adjourned prior to hearing the Autumn Fest item. Since there was not enough time to return to the Uptown Association prior to this evening's council meeting, staff came up with a different plan. And it was to host the 2020 Drive-Through Autumn Fest event at Yucaipa High School. The school district has approved the event to take place on the high school campus. The proposed event would take place on October 30th from 4 to 10 p.m. and would include a classic car show where the classic cars would actually be parked in the parking lot at the high school, and then people would drive through. They would cruise the car show. Cars coming to the event would be invited to decorate their car for a Halloween car decorating contest. And there will be a drive-in Halloween movie located in the same area where Concerts in Your Car were located at the high school. In addition, in an effort to bring business to the Uptown, staff is recommending hosting a haunted house inside the Yucaipa Performing Arts Center. This haunted house would take place every weekend from October 1st to November 1st and would follow all COVID-19 guidelines. The haunted house is the same haunted house that was used at previous Autumn Fest events and has been very well received by attendees. The estimated cost for the 2020 Autumn Fest and haunted house is $12,000, and the estimated revenue from the haunted house is $6,000 for a net expense in the amount of $6,000. And there's adequate funding in the fiscal year 2021 budget to cover these costs. The Youth Advisory Committee has been approached with the idea of the haunted house and has supported the idea and is looking into ways that they can help if the item is approved this evening. Staff is recommending that council approve the items as listed in the staff report. I can answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. Are there
If I
any
may-
questions of staff?
I'm sorry if I may, Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes.
add just a couple things very quickly? Number one, staff continues, and Megan's leadership continues to look for ways to drive customers, clients to the Uptown. As she mentioned, the haunted house was certainly an example of that. The Sandals Church permit for use of the urban park, the alley permit for use behind Yucaipa Uptown Merchant seems to be really growing in terms of the customer base there. And of course, expanded seating permitted by staff for businesses in the Uptown that can take advantage of that outdoor seating. So we continue to find ways that we can drive customers, clients to the Uptown wherever possible. And so I just wanted to make that point today.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Mr. Riddell,
No questions.
Ms. Allen,
Nope.
Mr. Duncan,
No?
Mr. Vogt.
Really quick, I like what you're doing. I think it's great. I did notice in the second paragraph at the end, it says, in order to hold an event in the historic Uptown, staff must obtain approval from the Uptown Association. So if that's the case, does that mean like everything that we do, say Autumn Fest and so forth, if it doesn't go through the Uptown Association, they basically can stop it at this point?
Everything in the form of special events, festivals, or development activity, including improvements to existing buildings, except what goes on at the Performing Arts Theater itself. But everything else, consistent with the MOU that was approved by council in 2014, I think, must go through the Uptown Association.
And it's not a recommendation, it's an actual,
Well, it is.
all the other committees that we have in Yucaipa, it's the recommendations. This is the one that can actually put the kibosh on the city council?
Well, no, ultimately, these decisions are made by the council, and it is a recommendation. But the MOU has some pretty strong language in terms of what happens if what happens if council doesn't follow that recommendation. There is the ability to dissolve the P-bid if they decide to do that.
Okay,
I didn't, are you done?
go ahead.
I didn't get the impression, I was there when we had all this going on and we wrote the MOU. I didn't get the impression that they had, we agreed to include them in the decision-making process. Does it say they have the right to approve it? Because I don't remember that.
Recommend for approval.
Okay.
Is that accurate?
Because the whole idea was they were just being completely excluded, and then it was dropped on them.
Maybe to be 100% clear, let me read that section.
Sure.
David has it here. The association shall be provided the opportunity to review and evaluate all proposed special events, development projects, and applicable architectural improvements to be held or undertaken within the P-bid boundary. The association may submit a recommendation regarding the preceding items to the city council, planning commission, or city staff as appropriate. In the event the action taken by the city council and/or other approving body is contrary to the association's recommendation, the association may elect to convene and take an action to commence the dissolution of the P-bid, and then we're obligated to help them with that.
Wow, I don't remember that. That's amazing. Yeah, that does give them that authority, doesn't it?
Well, again, you can make a different decision, but that does give them authority to dissolve the P-bid.
This warrants further discussion down the road, but for right now, let's just go ahead and deal with Ms. Wolf's presentation and recommendation. Did we get approval, first and a second, Jennifer?
So move.
I'll move the item.
We have a first.
I'll second.
And a second. If there's no further discussion, we take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Okay, now we're going on to item number 12, Conservation Funding Agreement for the Wilson 3 Basin Project Improvements, and that'll be Fermin Preciado.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is for a conservation funding agreement for the Wilson 3 Basin project. This project is the third regional flood control facility the city has developed and moved to construction over the years in partnership with San Bernardino County Flood Control District. And as you can see on the screen, this project is part of the city's North Bench Groundwater Resources Plan, which includes several projects to reduce the flood risk in the city, enhance the groundwater recharge opportunities, and also to provide all-weather traffic access by, as we've been doing with the construction of the bridges to replace the low-water crossings. Phase 1 of the construction of the Wilson 3 Basin is currently out to bid, and in order to get to the construction phase of the project did require permits from the Army Corps of Engineers, the Santa Ana Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And as council is aware, these permits are required because of the construction impacts in the natural drainage course. For the Wilson 3 Basin project, over 10.6 acres of permanent impacts were identified during the environmental review. These impacts are permanent and will require mitigation. The habitat mitigation and monitoring plan that was prepared for the project by the city's consultant, by the city's environmental consultant, identifies a total of 28.6 acres of mitigation area that's required to mitigate those construction impacts. Due to the amount of mitigation required, as well as the type of mitigation, the mitigation efforts will be implemented at 4 different sites. The exhibit on the screen is included in your packet, and it identifies the 4 different sites. The first site is within the Wilson 3 Basin project site area. Another site is the Fremont Street mitigation area, which is adjacent to the low water crossing that was recently constructed. The third site is the Oakland Creek corridor, which is between Bryant and Pendleton. And finally, the El Dorado mitigation area is also a proposed offsite mitigation area. The plan does require a third party to provide the oversight, monitoring, and the implementation of the mitigation measures, as well as it also requires the third party to hold the rights to that conservation easement. The Inland Empire Resource Conservation District is an entity that is approved by the resource agencies to complete those tasks. So staff is recommending that council approve a conservation funding agreement with the IERCD for the Wilson 3 Basin project. The proposed agreement identifies that the city will pay IERCD the amount of $300,000 as a deposit for the required short-term and long-term work. There are some efforts that are required to be done in perpetuity as part of the mitigation efforts. Most of those are reporting and monitoring. In April of this year, the city did submit a deposit of $5,000 to the IERCD for them to initiate the mitigation work that is being required, as well as for the preparation of the agreement that's before you tonight. Staff is recommending that City Council approve an additional amount of $10,000 to IERCD for their efforts to review and process the documents that were necessary for the proposed agreement, as well as their efforts in negotiating with the resource agencies on behalf of the city to reduce the mitigation requirements. Staff believes that without their efforts, we may have been required to mitigate a lot more than the 26 acres that are being required. The table on page 113 of the agenda includes the identified available funding for the Wilson 3 Basin project. That funding is included in the adopted fiscal year 2021 capital improvement program. I would like to point out that due to the recent El Dorado fire, staff will be meeting with IRCD staff later this week to assess the damage to the proposed mitigation area at El Dorado Park, and to also discuss any potential amendments to the agreement that may be required. If an amendment is required, staff will return to council at a future date with those details and a recommendation. Staff may also return to council in the near future with a recommendation to possibly close El Dorado Park for a certain amount of time due to the impacts of the fire. I would also like to point out that the area of El Dorado, where the trees have been planted over the years as part of the volunteer Make a Difference Day efforts, was not affected by the fire. So staff is looking into other volunteer projects this year, perhaps as part of Make a Difference Day, to plant additional trees and shrubs. One idea that we have been discussing is perhaps a diversity garden project to bring the community together for a volunteer project for a day. So with that, staff recommends that City Council approve the recommendations 1 through 4 as listed in the agenda report for this item. And that concludes my report, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Fermin. Are there any questions of staff? Councilmember Riddell.
No questions.
Councilmember Allen.
No questions.
Councilmember Duncan.
So these parcels that we're mitigating with, these are the ones that we have purchased over time, right? And sort of set them aside for this very purpose?
So if I may, it's a kind of a mixed bag. We have purchased some of the Oakland Creek corridor there. Some of it was donated. I'm not sure which is which here. Was this purchased for me? And then Fremont mitigation area, also, there was some right-of-way purchase for the Fremont project, property purchased, and that may be included here for me, and can answer that as well. And then El Dorado, the mitigation area there, of course, was donated by the Conservancy with the conditions that we provide public access to El Dorado Park, and including the parking lot and the restroom area being completed. Do you know if the other two are purchased or donated?
They were purchased, so for the most part, the mitigation will be on property that was purchased by the city. There is a small area that is a flood control drainage easement, which is under the county flood control's jurisdiction, but they are, since they're a partner in the project, they are allowing the mitigation efforts on that property.
And so then the mitigation land that we have to offer, now that it's burned, might not be suitable? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, we will be, the property is still there. It's a matter of whether how much effort, whether the current scope in the HMMP will address the damage that was caused by the fire. And what we've seen from what we've learned from other instances where this has happened is that even though the area has burned, it will require some additional seeding or something like that, but it's still able to be used as mitigation, but we'll know more this week. My thought is that I don't think we will be, I think we'll be able to get through it. I think we'll be able to address it with the scope of work that's included in the HMMP that's been approved. We may have to do some additional notification with the resource agencies, but we'll know more once we meet with IERCD staff this week.
And this IERCD, that's the organization that's going to build their facility right there on Oakland Road, right? Is that the same organization that has a plan to build on this property as well?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Bogue.
So you said that they were going to make some amendments to the current mitigation areas that are in El Dorado Ranch. Did I understand that correctly?
Based on our discussions with our IERCD staff, we may have to amend the scope of work in the agreement that's before you. And if that's the case, we can come back to City Council with those amendments.
Now, I got to be careful what I say here, but I know that's a sensitive subject, but disking a fire line in that area, is that out of the scope that we could change in this amendment? I'd like to see perhaps we could disc a fire line through that area for safety purposes.
We can certainly have that discussion with our IERCD staff.
Okay.
So if I may just follow up on that. The resource agencies don't have, at this point, jurisdiction over the previous agriculture area where winter wheat was grown. That would be a conversation with Wildlands Conservancy only in terms of what their conservation easement would allow. But I think they would be receptive to including some setback areas like you're talking about. And in addition, the improvements themselves, once they're completed, will eliminate the grass areas, if you will, between Oak Glen and the ridge line. So it'll be, by itself, will be a distance separating from the what we hope will be sage that comes back over time and the other habitat plants that come back over time. But the improvement area of El Dorado Ranch, Five Winds Ranch, by itself will create a buffer because it won't be grasslands or sage.
But that's quite a bit in the future. I
Yes.
guess it's going to be a while before it recovers regardless.
Agreed.
But you are going to have that conversation with,
About having, yes. So in the short term, we'll have the conversation about continuing to disc a certain area, certain width. In the long term, the permanent improvements should provide a buffer as well. Yes.
Very good. I would think that maybe we almost have a clean slate where we've eliminated, at least, through fire, some of the invasive vegetation. And there might be other challenges trying to rehab through the burned area, but I think I see opportunity here of really turning things around at that El Dorado Ranch. All right. We had discussion. Do I hear a motion to approve the funding?
I'll move to approve it.
I'll second.
All right, we have a first and a second. If there's no further discussion, Jennifer, take roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue,
aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. All right, we'll go ahead and right now we're going to open the public hearing for item number 13, statewide community infrastructure program ratification. And that'll be for me once more.
Yes, thank you. The California Statewide Communities Development Authority has instituted the Statewide Community Infrastructure Program, or the SKIP program. This program is an effective tool for the financing of public benefit projects. You may recall on October 14th of 2019, Council adopted resolution number 2019-44, which authorized the city of Yucaipa to participate and to join the SKIP program and allow property owners or developers in Yucaipa to submit financing applications to the CSCDA. The SKIP program allows property owners to finance the development impact fees for their development projects and or also finance the cost of public projects that are directly related to the development, to their development project, where they can finance the public infrastructure that is part of their development project. To date, one property owner has submitted an application to finance the development impact fees for a 70-unit residential development project located on 17th Street. They have also applied to finance, they have applied to finance the city's traffic fees, drainage fees, and the park development fees. As part of their application, they also applied to finance the Yucaipa Valley Water District sewer fees, since the water district is also participating in the SKIP program. I think it's important to point out that the developers participating in the SKIP program are required to formally disclose to their potential home buyers that they are participating in the SKIP program. And those potential home buyers are required to sign a form of disclosure acknowledging that they are aware of the SKIP program and the costs the additional costs that are being applied to their proposed purchase. Since an application for a project in Yucaipa is currently being processed by the CSCDA, staff is recommending that City Council conduct a public hearing to consider the adoption of resolution number 2020-55, authorizing the execution of an amended and restated joint exercise of powers agreement relating to the CSCDA, and also ratifying the previous actions of the City Council related to the issuance of the bonds by the CSCDA under the SKIP program. This proposed action will also ensure that the government code's noticing requirements for a public hearing are met, and will also facilitate the ability for other property owners or developers in the city of Yucaipa to submit applications to SKIP for the financing of their development impact fees or public projects. Over the years, this program has been successful in other cities, and as mentioned in the presentation that the CSCDA representative provided last year, it has a very low financial risk for the participating cities. That concludes my report, and staff is available for questions you may have.
Thank you, Fermin. Are any questions of staff? Mr. Riddell?
No questions.
Ms. Allen?
For me, what is the time or the payback period by the homeowners to these bonds?
I believe it is 15 years. You know, I don't have that information in front of me to confirm, but I believe it's 15 years.
And on just for an example, on a $400,000 home, what would be the additional monthly payment that a homeowner would have to make to pay off that debt?
Let's see, using the project in Yucaipa. Just taking into consideration the development impact fees, not the sewer fees for that project, it is an additional $42 a month. I'm sorry,
And then,
$42 a year.
$42 a year?
42.
You said month and they said year. Is it year or month?
It is 40.
Mr. Heap, I don't know if he's actually the applicant or representative of this, but he has stood up, and I think he might provide us with some, shed some light on this. Is that okay? Anyone object? Mr. Heap, give your name and for the record. And
Good evening, Craig Heaps,
Stop.
34259 Via Buena Drive here in Yucaipa. It's a 30-year payback on the bond. As an example, we are financing a total of about $25,000 per house on the 7-unit project, and the tax rate is going up from 1.25% to just about 1.6%. So it's over a 30-year period, so they're paying back the $25,000 per property, basically over a 30-year period. So whatever, just over $1,000 a month is, so it would probably be about $80 a month.
So it's like it's
And-
basically a CFD.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. That's what it sounds like. And the question then is, is your intent then to sell those homes for $25,000 less than what the market value would be?
It's a way to assist the builder in paying the fees, allowing a better, not a $25,000 less price, but a better price on the home, and allowing the builder to pay some of the fees that are out there right now that are a little hard to deal with, school fees and things of that nature, by bringing some of the fees down.
And for me, what's the difference between this and a Melrose?
Very similar. It's just that it's a statewide.
Yeah, they're very similar. I know the SKIP program actually falls under the statewide program, but they're very similar.
Except there's no homeowners association involved, right, with a SKIP program?
I don't believe that they're proposing a homeowner association here, no.
But that's different than a Melrose. Does a Melrose require a homeowners association?
No.
No.
No. Okay.
I think as the applicant, as Mr. Heaps mentioned, the concept here is we haven't seen a lot of housing starts in the last 5 years. We're about ready to come to council over the next month with our first study session on our housing element. The SCAG number we've been given is about 2,800 units with the to be built over the next 8 years. With the water fees the way they are, the school fees the way they are, the building industry came to council back in August of last year. Ultimately, the council approved it in October to consider this form of financing to assist with those fee issues.
Ray, does this include the school and water fees, the skip funding, or is this just the city side?
This is just, in this particular project, again, there's only one project that's being proposed with this current bond sale in November. With this particular project, it is, they're proposing the city fees for parks, drainage, and traffic, and they're proposing, I believe, sewer fees for the water district. Nothing for the school district. But I do believe the school district assessments are part of that total 1.6%, and I think that's a question for Mr. Heaps, but I do believe that's part of the 1.6% total tax, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they're not included in the 1.6%. The 1.6% is the base 1.25% fee that is normally charged, plus the additional for the $25,000 that's being bonded for. The school fees are all paid when permits are pulled, and then, of course, the certificate of occupancy. There's a small amount, a fee that I think was enacted in 1988. It was for any new development, which is included in that, but most of the fees themselves are paid by the developer when they pull their permits for the schools.
Okay, any other questions? Mr. Bogue?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Mr. Duncan?
No, sir.
Okay. Let's see, we do have, this is number 13. Okay. Since there's no public comments on this, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing for discussion. Anybody have anything to say? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, Jennifer, we call roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Okay, that passes. We'll go ahead and go to a study session, item number 14, Avenue E Roundabout Landscape Concept Plan Study with none other than Landon Kern.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. This item is a study session for council to review and consider the proposed landscape concept plan for the roundabouts at Avenue E, at 2nd Street and 3rd Street. I'm very pleased this evening to report to you that construction of these improvements for a very important and critical community project are about 95% complete. Over the coming days and weeks, we'll be wrapping up construction with some punch list items and completing the signage that goes along with these intersections and street improvements that are almost nearly complete. And we have a couple pictures here. These photos were actually taken by BIENNIAL Consulting Engineers, who's helping us manage this project with the drone. These pictures were taken just last Friday, midday. There's two pictures here, that first one and the second one, which were taken at the 2nd Street intersection. This one's looking west, the 3rd Street intersection further on into the distance there. So the striping that you see was installed last Friday, and the signage is mostly installed. Some more will be completed this week. We were able to open up those intersections to traffic on Friday afternoon with some temporary construction signage. And in addition to the benefits that these roundabout intersections have for traffic operations and reduced maintenance, as we've seen in the Uptown, safety is one of the key features of these types of intersections. And several state and federal design documents, including the Caltrans Highway Design Manual, the FHWA roundabout informational guide and the California MUTCD were used to design and construct these two new roundabouts, which are very similar in size and design to the existing roundabouts in the Uptown on the Boulevard. These guidelines I just referenced also require that the ultimate condition of that central roundabout island be raised with additional recommendations for landscape features to increase the visibility of that central island to drivers as they enter these types of intersections. Staff coordinated with the city's contract landscape architect, Steve Franken, who developed the landscape plan before you this evening that's in your packet. With these requirements and recommendations in mind, I'll highlight some of the features of this proposed plan for you. This first plan here is the plan view section of these improvements for both intersections, 3rd Street on the left and 2nd Street. They're almost identical in nature. The plan with the central islands is basically identical in this proposed plan, with them being mirrored so that they don't look exactly the same. The main difference on 2nd Street being that there's on that northwest corner a little bit more of a landscaped area between the sidewalk improvements and that street. If we can move to the next slide, you can see a little bit closer up here the example here at 3rd Street with the construction notes that are proposed, showing a combination of granite cobbles of different sizes, larger granite boulders, and decomposed granite of the Yucaipa gold variety. The central island in there, if we can go maybe 2 slides forward, you can see it a little bit more clearly with the legend a little more legible. The pedestrian islands also feature similar components that are shown here, but you can see the DG splits up the different sides of the cobbles, and then those larger boulders would be placed strategically in the island. One of the key features of this proposed landscape plan is to create and grade inside that center island so that it has a mounded or a domed look, varying in height, typically from anywhere between 2 to 6 feet, so that as you enter that intersection, you get those enhanced benefits and the visibility of that center island. One of the benefits that you see in doing this kind of an approach is reducing that headlight glare from the opposing vehicles as if you're entering that intersection at the same time as someone else on the other side. The proposed plan does not require irrigation water, and therefore it minimizes the construction and maintenance costs. I have some more information I can share with you with respect to the anticipated costs associated with constructing those improvements, as well as the fees that would be required to install new meters at each intersection, along with the irrigation lines that would need to go in. And along with these proposed landscape features in this plan, a combination of reflective pavement markers, signage, and other reflective striping can be incorporated into this intersection with the goal of maximizing the visibility of these improvements for vehicles and pedestrians using this facility. If we go to the final slide, I attached a few photos throughout town here in Yucaipa that illustrate some of these features that we see in town that are a common theme. In the center medians over there to the right is a picture taken in the Yucaipa Boulevard median, just here across from City Hall down the street a little bit. And some of our other parks and streetscaping also utilize some decomposed granite, some of that granite cobble in the bottom left there. And at the top left, there's just a photograph taken today of the 2nd Street intersection from the ground to kind of give you an idea of the current grading and how this landscape plan would actually create that domed mound look. With this information in mind, staff recommends that council conduct a study session to review and consider the proposed plan.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions of staff? Councilmember Riddell.
Yeah, I do. I have a comment. I like the fact that you're not planting anything out there like shrubs or trees or anything that requires water or continued maintenance, because over time that just turns to weeds and a mess. So I like the fact that it's hardscape and there's no nothing in there that requires maintenance or water or that type of thing.
Very good. And I skipped over public comment, so Councilmember Allen, if you will indulge me. Bill McEwen, I believe, has a comment. Thank you for your patience, Bill, and thank you for reminding me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just briefly, I wanted to thank the city council and the staff for moving forward with these two roundabouts. I think it's going to be a really good neighborhood improvement. And I really like the idea of dryscape, where you don't have to do irrigation. It is pretty, these are actually unlit street areas. So I think the idea of a minimalist approach can end up looking really good if you do it right. And it's also an area of graffiti, where time to time we have problems with graffiti in the area. So I don't know if there's anything you can do to, grow vines on the, I don't know. I'll leave it to the professionals. But if hopefully that was taken into account, that there is an ongoing problem with, particularly in that neighborhood, with graffiti. Anyway, this is a really good project. Again, I want to thank the staff and the city council. Without you guys working together, this wouldn't be happening. I went up there today, and it's just really nice. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McEwen. Councilmember Allen, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I also have driven both the roundabouts. I think they are really well done. Congratulations to staff and also on getting the project completed. Soon we'll be having a ribbon cutting event. We can all stay 6 feet apart, okay? But I think we should do that, figure out a way to do that, because those are really quite an achievement. I also like the idea of it being hardscape, but agree with Fermin, or no, it wasn't Fermin that presented. But anyway, in terms of the lighting, Landon, I think that whatever we can do to improve the lighting in those two roundabouts with reflective or minimal types of devices to add lighting to those intersections, that would be really a good addition.
Solar, something like that.
Solar or something, but that's one thing I did notice, because I did drive them at night and it was quite dark, and they do need something. But again, I'll let the experts figure out what that is.
Mr. Duncan.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Mr. Bogue.
No, I drove them and they look good. No complaints. Looks good.
I want to say I drove them, I believe it was Sunday, yesterday, and I saw your vision. I think it's a very good idea. I don't mind roundabouts one bit. I think this is going to be a wonderful addition. I was a little skeptical, I have to admit, in the beginning, but looks like it worked out. I do have one question that's a little sidebar. What is Yucaipa gold?
That is the type of the decomposed granite that it's a local variety that we use. It's a compacted granite that goes on a lot of the trails and some of the different parks that we have.
Is it more coarse than regular DG?
I think each manufacturer that makes these kind of materials has their own trademark. I think this is a local company that perhaps just more of a coloration, I think.
Okay. I just never heard it until I read it the other day. All right, this is a study session. So do we like the idea? Let them move forward with this, folks?
Next steps, I suppose, will be to finalize the plans, and we will move forward toward advertising for bids and return with a recommendation to award that contract.
Really quick, Bill, I think Bill had a good point where he said be careful about putting things that can be graffitied on.
Yeah, it's a good comment.
I think it's a good comment.
Certainly.
Okay, I think they can move forward. Does anyone have anything else to add? Nothing? Very good. Thank you very much. So we'll just moving on. Okay, Coming down to the home stretch here, do we have any announcements from anybody? Mr. Riddell, you have any announcements?
No announcement.
Ms. Allen?
Nope.
Mr. Duncan?
Nope.
Mr. Bogue? No. I have no announcements. Other than I'm glad that we're finally, at least our city of Yucaipa is kind of out of the woods with the fire situation. We still need to pray for those of us, or, our friends and family members who are still in harm's way. It's not over yet, but at least we can breathe a little bit easier. Stress is off of us. Okay, we do have some closed session items. Mr. Snow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have one item on this evening's closed session agenda. It's conference with legal counsel regarding a liability claim, number 2020-12 from Brendan Messes, and we would expect reportable action on that item this evening.
Okay, we'll go ahead and adjourn the public meeting and for 5 minutes so we can get to the closed session. Captain Miller and staff, thank you for your service. Captain Williams, same